Okay, the lesson for module 3 is about Asian ethical and religious conceptions. Morality is closely tied up with religion because, generally speaking, the way in which you achieve oneness with a deity or with God is by way of um, subscribing to an ethical standard. Not only to foster good relationship with others, but to act morally will be your bridge, your gate pass, your golden ticket to entrance to the spiritual realm or to heaven, if we are to talk about Christianity and other major religions. Now, it's important for us to have a basic knowledge of the moral claims or the moral standards of these Asian religions. Number one, primarily because number one, the course Ethics 1 invites us to have this openness, to have this sensitivity to the beliefs of others, so that we are able, to foster a good rapport with other people who might have different belief systems. Secondly, not only respect to belief systems, but culture in general. For example, Hinduism, for that matter, in India, is not only mainly a religious doctrine, but Hinduism in general in India pervades or penetrates not only religion, but also the way in which people live. Okay? That is why Hinduism is also taught not only as a religion, but also a philosophy. The same can also be said of Buddhism. If you ask a Buddhist, what is your religion? The Buddhist might answer this way: I don't have a religion. I only have a way of life. Right? So the first two in the module, Taoism and Confucianism, it is described by the module authors as ethics as a way of life. Bakit ganon? It means that you act morally so as to guide your life in general, the way in which you live. Okay? Taoism and Confucianism, we can say that these two are more concerned with society than being otherworldly or being preoccupied with deities or gods. Okay? So let's begin first with Confucianism. Okay? At the heart of Confucianism is Ren, or human-heartedness. Sa Tagalog siguro ay pagkakaroon ng puso para sa iba. That's the core of Confucianism. And human-heartedness or yung pagkakaroon ng puso para sa iba is manifested in the virtues you have read in the module. No? Propriety, palabra de honor, yung mga rituals, yung relations, no? All of this, you do these standards because you're concerned with society. No? Kay Confucius din nag-stem yung golden rule na tinatawag, no? Do to others what you expect others to do unto you. No? Gawin mo sa iba yung gusto mong gawin sa iyo. Confucius gives us a hint of how to be a good person. You want to be a good person, you make sure that your placement, your standing in society is peaceful. No? You make your standing in society peaceful by being proper in rituals, dressing the right way, participating in these rituals, rectifying your name. If you are a son, act like a son. If you're a father, act like a father. Okay? So, in other words, you're acting, you're being moral. No? It's not only for your sake, but it's also for the good of the community, the good of the entire population. Okay? Hindi ka gagawa ng hindi naayon sa rules of propriety dahil baka maapektuhan yung social order. Okay? But you do all these things, you contribute to the betterment, to the peace and order of society because of Ren, because of human-heartedness. Okay? So that's the core of Confucianism. Confucianism in general is not actually you might call that a religion, but it's actually more of a way of life. Okay? For example, ang isang at least two examples I could think of about Confucianism is number one, yung mga tea ceremony. No? Yung tamang pagbibigay ng cup of tea, yung tamang posisyon kapag nakaupo, no? Yung kasuotan. No? And then another practice na very Confucian ay yung pag-aalay or paglalamay sa patay. No? Usually, tumatagal yan ng 3 years. If I remember it correctly sa readings ko about Confucianism. Tumatagal ng 3 years yung paglalamay para sa patay. The question is, yung paglalamay ba para sa patay in Confucian thought, is it really for the dead? No? Actually, it's not so much about the dead. Who knows whether there is really a spiritual realm? But the offering to the dead, these elaborate practices for the dead, are actually for the self. No? Para mapanatag yung puso, lalo na halimbawa, biglang namatay yung parent mo, tapos meron kayong sama ng loob. So, the ritual of offering to the dead is actually, of course, you can say that it is for the dead. But if we're not so sure whether the dead are really on the other side, kung meron ba talagang kabilang buhay, that's another matter. But the rituals for the dead, which is actually corresponding to rules of propriety, is actually for the self. Diba? Ang hirap, halimbawa, mamatay yung nanay mo na meron kayong unresolved issues na dalawa. And so, the ritual for the dead actually makes a final way of saying sorry, even though the dead is not anymore physically present. So, kapag at peace ka dun sa namatay, Naniniwala si Confucius that everything will follow. The way you deal with other people, the way you deal with your leaders, the way you act as a member of society, it will follow. Okay? Diba? Kapag ka, bagay sa rules of property, when you act as a student, no, at hindi ka acting like as if you're the teacher, merong social order. No? Clear boundaries. Napakaganda kapag ganun yung lipunan, no? Clear yung boundaries. No? You're a politician, then do everything you can to best serve the interests of your constituents. Okay? You're a subject of a king, then follow the rules. Okay? So, that is for Confucianism. So, ano lang to, sinasummarize ko lang yung binasa yung mga module. Okay? So, that's for Confucianism. Now, the wisdom actually is a response to Confucianism. You see, Confucianism has a lot of very arbitrary practices. No, may ritual sa patay, no, may mga relations. Taoism is actually, an antithesis. It's actually an opposition. It's actually a school of thought that would like to oppose Confucianism. So Taoism, they highlight the free-flowing nature of the universe. The universe is not quadrado. The universe is not bound with rules. Okay? The universe will not judge you for the evil and the goodness of things. But the universe is actually an interplay between the good and the evil. That is why one symbol that best highlight Taoism is the yin and yang. Ang lahat ng bagay ay magkaugnay. May itim, may puti. May masculinity, may femininity. May gabi, may araw. Okay? Everything is in interplay. Sa Confucianism kasi may idea na kaya may mga rules ay dahil either mabuti ka pa lang sa simula at yung rules actually ay pamamaraan mo para i-express yung pagiging mabuti mo, or masama kang tao sa simula. Kaya the rules are there, to rectify, to correct our bad nature. But in Taoism is silent about that. What Taoism says is that, good and bad, they are present in every creature. Not only humans, but even in water. We can say that, water is free-flowing, it gives life, and yet water also can give death. If you drown, for example, in sea. So the wisdom is actually more of a cheerful acceptance of the nature of things. To accept things as they naturally thrive. One good example, or one good example, right? Example of a Taoist, of a celebrity is Bruce Lee. Si Bruce Lee, meron siyang kasabihan, no? Be like water, making its way through cracks. Di ba? Imagine you're in a falls. No? Nasa falls ka. Yung tubig naman sa falls, they just flow kung saan merong mga crack. They just simply go with the flow. Kaya nga, another concept in Taoism is Wu Wei. No? To action by non-action. What does it mean? If it's time for studying, you study. Because that's the call of the moment. If you have done everything you can, then that's it. But, Taoism does not mean katamaran. Ang flow ko ngayon ay matulog. No. Taoism is not like that. Taoism is to let the natural course of things invade your daily life. Okay? Merong kaunting resemblance, no, sa Confucianism. Okay? Now let me read to you one of my hobbies, pastime, is to translate. No, ang isa sa mga work ng Taoism ay yung Tao Te Ching. So it's a collection of short poems na they best espouse the teachings of Taoism. No? So ang hobby ko at times ay i-translate sa Tagalog, sa Filipino, yung excerpts from the Tao Te Ching. For example, let me read to you my translation of chapter 79 of Tao Te Ching. No? This is my translation. Ang pagkabigo ay isang pagkakataon. Kung sisisihin mo ang iba, wala itong katapusan. Ito'y magpakailanman. Kung lugmok ka na dahil nabigo ka, no? You failed. The wisdom teaches us, kung hahanapin mo, or kung hahanap ka ng masisisi because of your failure, that's endless. When in fact, your own failure actually is your own doing. So what should be done? Huwag ka nang manisi ng iba. Rise up. Because that's the demand. The natural way of things is when you fall down, you get up. Okay? Another one. Ang daan tungo sa liwanag ay tila madilim. Ang daan pasulong ay tila pabalik. Ang daang matuwid ay tila mahaba. Ang tunay na kapangyarihan ay tila kahinaan. Ang tunay na kabusilakan ay tila karumhan. You know, life is not a bed of roses. When you want to something, when you want to, for example, to be a successful student at university, you really need to, figuratively speaking, you need to go through the models. You need to go through the struggles of being a student. Ito pa isa, no? I think this would be my last. Punuin mo ang mangkok hanggang sa mapuno at ito'y matatapon. Maghabol sa salapi, sa pera, at ang iyong loob ay di mapapalagay. Isipin ang sasabihin ng iba at ikay kanilang magiging bilanggo. You know, when you think of the comments of others, the perceptions of others about you, you become a prisoner of their own expectations. If you have your own talents, then use it as much as you can. But do not be a square trying to fit in a circle. That would not happen. No? Di ba nung mga bata tayo, no? Some of us, no, yung may mga shapes. Diba? When we're trying to learn about shapes, diba? Hindi mo maipapasok yung square block sa isang star frame. Life is like that, no? You would not fit in all of the expectations of people. People want you to be a star, but sometimes you need to be a circle in order to fit in. People want you to be like this in the future, but that's not you. That is not how you to be concrete, no? To be more precise. People want you to be a doctor, but you know for yourself that you want to be an artist. You will never fit in their expectations. Of course, may masasagasaan, di ba? Maybe your parents. Maybe the prospect of you having, tons of money in the future. But darkness and light are complementary in things. Failure is inevitable. Okay? So what if you failed as a student? You just make sure that you did everything you can in order to, I think yung module writers, isang similarity niyan sa Filipino ay yung bahala na. And last time when I discussed bahala na, I told you that bahala na is actually not a form of laziness. But it's a resign to things that you cannot anymore control. Water cannot control itself. But when water continues just with the flow, a falls becomes beautiful in the eyes of those watching the falls. A tree cannot control its growth. But when you see the various sizes of trees situated or planted in a mountain, you see the grandeur of things. You cannot control your appearance. You cannot control your talents, but you can hone them to be a version of yourself that is uniquely your own doing. Kailangan lang sa Taoism, you respond to the demand of the situation. Okay? Very beautiful, no? Taoism. I try to live by sometimes in their pronouncements, in their suggestions about how to live life. Okay? Are there questions at this point before I move to the next? Feel free to unmute or use the chat box. Okay, let me continue. So the next is, so tapos na tayo sa ethics as a way of life. Okay? The next portion is ethics as a way to spiritual liberation. Okay? So ito medyo otherworldly itong dalawang to, no? Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay? Now, in Hinduism, what we want to bear in mind is that their ultimate goal is to unite one's self to the Brahman. Brahman is like the god of Hinduism, although it's really different with the god of Christianity. No? That is for other discussion. But there's Brahman, and Brahman is the creator of all things. What you want to do in your life is, as much as possible, cultivate your soul so that it gets freed of karma. You break away from what they call samsara, or the endless cycle of rebirth and death, so that you will be liberated and therefore be united with the Creator or Brahma. Okay? The goal of the soul in its earthly existence is to avoid the illusion of the world. No? To avoid the illusion as much as possible, Maya, yun yung Maya. And the fruit of that avoiding that illusion is avidya. To avoid avidya, false knowledge. Okay? Now, the four ends of Hinduism, no, artha, material wealth, okay na magkaroon ka ng material wealth as long as that wealth teaches you, or not teach, as long as you can use that wealth in order to free your mind from attachment. Paradoxical, no? But, you know, your wealth can be used to pursue the generosity to others. Okay? The next is kama, no? Pleasure. Kaya nga may Kama Sutra, no? Na yung libro. No? Incidentally, the word kama in Tagalog is also connected to pleasure. No? Matutulog, that's pleasure, di ba? Pag matutulog ka. Okay. Dharma. Dharma is duty. No? Kung sundalo ka, magpakasundalo ka. Kung ruling class ka, magpaka-ruling class ka. Okay? And the last is moksha. Moksha is liberation from the samsara. Okay? Ibig sabihin, kaya siya tinawag na four ends. Kailangan magkaroon ka ng wealth. Kailangan magkaroon ka ng pleasure. Kailangan ganapin mo yung duty mo. Kapag ginawa mo yung tatlong to ng maayos, you will attain liberation or moksha. Okay? So kung alipin ka, magpaka-alipin ka lang. Bakit? Kasi pag namatay ka, pwedeng ang reincarnation ng katawan mo ay, merchant ka naman pag sunod na reincarnation. Ginawa mo ng maayos yung trabaho mo bilang merchant, di pwedeng ruling class ka na sa susunod na reincarnation mo. Ginawa mo ng mabuti yung magagawa mo, hindi ka na ma-reincarnate, di ba? Liberated ka na sa cycle. Okay? One day, this is a story about a holy man, a sage. Okay? One day, a sage was on the river banks at meron siyang kasama. Okay? Tapos, merong scorpion na natatangay ng ilog. So what the sage did was to rescue the scorpion from the moving current of water. Tapos ang ginawa ng scorpion, in-sting yung sage, yung holy man. Okay? So ano nangyari? Nabitawan ng holy man yung scorpion. For the second time, the scorpion was again thrashing on the waters. So what the sage did was, again, to rescue the scorpion. But the scorpion, again, stung the holy man. So yung kasama ng holy man, the sage, asked the sage, Master, bakit mo ba sinasagip yung scorpion? Ini-sting ka lang naman. What the master said was, the dharma of the scorpion is to sting. That's its nature, to sting whenever there's a potential threat. But my dharma as a human is to save and feel compassion. So dharma is your nature as a person. If you are a soldier, defend well your kingdom because that's your role. If you're a merchant, then sell goods without tricking others. Huwag ka mandaya. Because in the next life, you might be reincarnated in a better standing in society. Another story is, I don't know if you're familiar with Bhagavad Gita. No? That's one of the classic literatures in India. The Bhagavad Gita is about the story of a young soldier named Arjuna. and his dialogue between a reincarnated God, not reincarnated, by a God named Krishna. So one day, Arjuna was in the battlefield. And when he saw na yung mga papatayin niya ay mga kamag-anak niya, he had a dilemma. The dilemma was obvious. Bakit mo papatayin yung mga kamag-anak mo? So Krishna, the God, came to the rescue of Arjuna. Sabi niya kay Arjuna, your dharma is to be a soldier, to defend the kingdom. You want to be a fulfilled soldier? Then do as what your duty demands you. Okay? Save the kingdom. Defend the kingdom. And with regards to your relatives na pwedeng mapatay mo during the course of the war, do not worry. Why is that so? Because when they get killed, they will be reincarnated. You did your duty, they get reincarnated. Now, of course, no, parang hindi benta siguro sa inyo yung storya na between your duty and your family, papatayin mo. No? But, of course, the Hindu framework or the Hindu theory is basically, wag mong isipin yung mamamatay. Do not think yung mamamatay. Isipin mo if you are fulfilling your duty, your dharma as a soldier. Okay? Baka dahil sa pag-fulfill mo ng duty, you will end the endless cycle of samsara. You will be freed from this cycle. Okay? So that is for Hinduism. The other is Buddhism. No? The founder is Siddhartha Gautama. Now, who is Siddhartha Gautama? Siddhartha Gautama was a son of a king. And so, he was a prince by birth. Bago pa ipanganak si Siddhartha Gautama, meron ng hula, no, about him. So his father, the king, consulted ano ba yung manghuhula sa English? Basta, consulted an oracle reader. Okay? Sabi niya, what will my son be? Ang hula ng oracle reader ay ito. Your son would either be a successful, powerful monarch or a spiritual leader. So yun yung hula. The father did not want his son, Siddhartha, to be a spiritual leader. Okay? And so, what the father, the king, did was to imprison Siddhartha Gautama during his younger years, until about 16 or 18 years old. Of course, Siddhartha Gautama did not think that he was imprisoned, because Siddhartha Gautama enjoyed the lavish life of a prince. All the food, all the women he wanted, all the attention befitting of a prince. Siddhartha Gautama enjoyed that. Siddhartha Gautama did not ever thought that he was imprisoned. But things changed when he was about 16 to 18 years old, when he asked his driver, his charioteer, for him to leave the palace for the very first time. Ginusto ni Siddhartha Gautama na mamasyal and to see the world outside the palace walls. So, in short, tumakas si Siddhartha Gautama. But when he went out of the palace, the first thing he saw was an old person beside the road. So, tingnan niyo yung charioteer niya. Ano yan? Sabi niya, yan ay isang matanda. And so Siddhartha Gautama asked the charioteer, magiging ganyan din ba ako? And the charioteer replied, yes, yes, my lord. You will become like that one day. And then, tumuloy sila sa paggagala sa labas ng palasyo. Ang pangalawa niyang nakita ay isang babae na may sakit. So, tingnan niyo ulit yung driver niya. Magiging ganyan din ba ako? Sabi ng driver, yes, my lord. You will also become sick one day. The last scenery Gautama discovered isang funeral procession. So, tinanong niyo yung driver niya, magiging mamamatay din ba ako? Sabi ng driver niya, yes, my lord, you will die also one day. So, Gautama, for the very first time, realized what life was really. And so, because he was pressured, no? He met along the way outside the palace a Hindu monk. How do I become like you? So, meron ng konti-unting spiritual awakening kay Siddhartha Gautama. Sabi niya, go to the forest, sabi ng monk, and you will discover the truths about life. So, upon returning to the palace, Gautama renounced his being a monarch. He renounced his being a prince. And so, he left the palace and went to the forest and tried to imitate. He tried to imitate the practices of these Hindu monks. Okay? He meditated and studied under the gurus, the monks he found in the forest. Gautama, legends say, Gautama was so devout a Hindu that he really practiced fasting. Sa sobra daw pagpapractice ni Gautama ng fasting, he became emaciated. No? I'm typing now sa chat box. Emaciated ay yung sobrang payat. Legends tell us na sa sobrang payat daw ni Gautama because of fasting in the forest, yung kanyang tiyan sa harap ay dumikit na sa kanyang balat sa likod. Yun yung legend. Ganun daw kapayat, dumikit na. Pero may hinahanap pa rin si Siddhartha Gautama. Sabi niya parang may kulang, parang may mali sa paniniwala ng mga Hindu. Now one day, a woman visited the forest with gifts. Mag-aalay siya sa mga gods. He saw Siddhartha Gautama at napagkamalan niya si Siddhartha na God. Maybe because Siddhartha was in deep prayer. Napagkamalan niya ngayon si Siddhartha Gautama na Diyos. And so what the woman did was inalay niya yung pagkain na dala niya kay Siddhartha. And Siddhartha was in a long fast that time. So what Siddhartha did was, he took the food the woman offered. He ate it. And there came a realization na hindi mo kailangang magpakagutom para lang magkaroon ng spiritual liberation. So from that moment, until maliwanagan ng husto si Siddhartha Gautama, he found what is now being called the middle way. Gusto mong maliwanagan sa buhay? Hindi mo kailangan magpakagutom. Pero, hindi mo rin naman kailangan magpakabusog. Yung sobrang busog. No? Yung takaw. Middle way. Hindi mo kailangan nasa forest ka lang. Kailangan mo rin lumabas ng forest para ituro sa iba yung daan patungo sa enlightenment. Okay? So, he meditated and found the middle way. And furthermore, he found the 4 truths about life. Number 1, that there is suffering and we cannot escape suffering. Number 2, that there is a start of suffering. No? May pinagmulan ang pagdurusa natin bilang tao. And the reason behind that is craving. And the way, 4th one, the way in which we can escape craving is if we do the 8-fold path. You can search that on Google, no? Right intention, right speech, right livelihood, right intention. Meaning to say, using the middle way, you're trying to save yourself, but you're also trying to liberate others. Ano ngayon ang pinagkaiba ni Gautama sa Hinduism? He was a Hindu, no? Just to be clear, he was a devout Hindu at first. But Gautama had some problems or had some issues with, siyempre yung fasting, nabanggit ko na. Number 2, he had issues whether meron ba talagang mga gods. Okay? So, hindi naniniwala si Gautama sa mga gods, pero the fact na hindi natin sila kayang ma-reach, isang tabi natin yung mga Diyos. That is why Buddhism is also sometimes called an atheistic religion. Wala kasing mga Diyos sa Buddhism. Ang meron lang si Buddha. Though si Buddha hindi siya Diyos, no? May mga statwa si Buddha, pero hindi siya Diyos. He is just a model. A model na gagayahin ng mga Buddhists. Para na sa gayon, ma-liberate sila gaya ni Buddha, ni Siddhartha Gautama. Okay? Ano ang fruit ngayon kapag nasunod mo yung middle way? The fruit of that is nothingness. Sabi sa module, kung nagbasa na kayo, nothingness is not to be construed as simpleng wala. No? Kasi walang term sa English na would best capture nothingness. But I think one way of describing what nothingness means is no worries. No? Wala ka nang aalalahanin kasi malaya ka na. And unlike Hinduism na ang liberation ay makakamit mo pag patay ka na, in Buddhism, you can actually achieve liberation while you are still living. Buddhists, for example, believe that the Dalai Lama, no? The Dalai Lama is already liberated. And the Dalai Lama's task is, to invite people to be liberated. Okay? So that is for Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay? Are there questions at this point? What if the natural order is disrupted or corrupted? Would we still follow those norms in a Taoistic Confucianistic perspective? What if the natural order is an order which allows disruption? I would answer that question also with a question. What if the natural order features disruption as natural? So the answer is, in a Taoistic perspective, no? Taoism and Confucianism should not be mistaken as the same. No? In a Taoist perspective, disruptions are normal. If that is how nature acts. But in Confucianism, you can avoid disruption actually. At least with society, if you follow the rules of society. Okay? So that is how I would like to answer the question. No? In a Taoist perspective, how would you know if it is a disruption? When in fact, disruptions are natural. You live in peace, then a volcano erupts. That's disruption. Many will die. Mawawala ng kabuhayan. If you apply that to the present situation, what if the pandemic is actually a natural disruption of our notion of what is normal? Okay? So you accept things. Okay? Are the rules of society natural? Are the laws and rules of society the same po ba? I think that I can answer your question by referring to our first lesson. No? How laws are born. Mores, folkways, mores, okay, laws. But laws and rules of society, depende, no? How would you define law in that sentence or in that question? How would you define rule? Okay? I have to understand muna what do you refer to when you use the word law and when you use the word rule. Pareho ba yung gamit mo or magkaiba yung meaning nila? Okay? Since absolute nothingness in Buddhism can be achieved while living, is it wrong to say that nirvana can also be achieved by death? Nirvana is a Hindu concept. Sorry, my bad. Moksha is a Hindu concept. Nirvana is Buddhist. I'm not really sure about this, no? But to answer your question, I think no, nirvana can also be achieved by death. Since hindi naman pare-pareho ang moment ng pagkakaliberate ng tao. Okay? Let me just check again. No? Nalito ako dun sa nirvana. Yeah. Nirvana is a Buddhist concept. Okay? Okay, I will continue. So, we're done with the Chinese Hinduism, Confucianism, Taoism, and then the Hindu, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Now we go to, I think, more familiar forms of concepts, no? Islam and Christianity. What is common to these two is that they are Abrahamic religions. Their roots stem from Abraham. Okay? What I'd like to discuss about Islam is that their core is to have a consciousness of Allah. No? To be conscious that Allah is there. And you know, for Muslims, I don't know if meron tayong Muslim na estudyante dito. Maybe you can add to the discussion later. No? For Muslims, if you're conscious of Allah, your creator, they believe that, in the same way also for Christianity, if you're conscious with Allah or God, Yahweh, Jesus Christ, if you are fully conscious of them, then more or less, your life should be affected by their example as espoused in their scriptures. Gusto ko lang i-highlight sa Islam kasi I think very very straightforward naman yung module, no? Yung jihad, no? Yung dulo. No? Merong peaceful means of striving, no? Kasi ang goal ng Muslims, again, if there's a Muslim in class, you might want to correct me. Ang goal ng Islam, just like any other religion, is to, introduce Allah to the community. And one way of introducing Him is by education, by example. Yun yung peaceful na jihad na tinatawag. But of course, just like Christianity, meron din mga sekta ang Muslim. No, meron kang mga Shiites, no? Mga iba-ibang strands within the Muslim umbrella, where they interpret jihad in a very violent way. Okay? Kaya may nagsusuicide bombing, merong talaga nakikipaggera, because for them, you should do everything to glorify Allah and to make sure Allah is propagated. The belief in Allah is propagated in the world. Okay? Whereas sa Christianity, I think most, if not all here are Christians, the core of Christianity is love, basically. Ako yung sumulat ng module sa yung portion dyan ng Christianity, no? So, I tried to be straightforward there, no, about Christianity, that love is the core of Christianity. No? Ang loophole lang, no? I would not anymore discuss the Islam, no? I think that the module is straightforward. Ang loophole lang with Christianity is this. For example, Christianity prohibits us from killing. Talaga bang hindi pwedeng pumatay at all times? Mga ganun. Bakit may mga Kristiyano na who allow death penalty? Okay? Bakit may mga Kristiyano na nagsasabing, abortion is sinful? Huh? That is the vagueness of Christianity, no? The vagueness of Christianity is that love, 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 love. Pero hindi clear-cut yung standards. Okay? But if you ask a Christian, as long as you're guided with scriptures, and if you're a Catholic, as long as if you're guided with the teachings of the church, then you can be so sure about how you deal with morality. Okay? So I will not anymore delve sa Islam and Christianity. The modules there are, I think, written in a very straightforward manner. So I think the modules, that particular part of the module speaks for itself. Okay? So are there questions at this point? By the way, no, we're not here to discuss doctrines of Christianity, no? So please ask. No? We're not concerned about their doctrine, no? Kung meron ba talagang heaven and hell, mga ganun. Okay? So we're after just the moral concepts. If murder is a sin, does murder for the sake of humanity considered still a sin? Can you clarify where you would like that question to be subsumed? Of course, sin, pag sinabing kasalanan, mayroon ng dimension ng religion. But what particular religion are you referring to? Christianity. The one problem in Christianity is that, I think nasabi ko na to last time na when we were discussing religion as a challenge to ethics. The problem with Christianity is that, just like any other, for example, Muslim, is there are different sects, sekta. No? For example, the good Senator Manny Pacquiao would say that God allows death penalty, or God would understand death penalty because God allows it. some Christians would say, no, na justifiable ang war since sa Old Testament inallow ng Diyos ang war. No? But again, this is a moral philosophy class. No? This is a doctrine class. Okay? So I think it would be an injustice to Christianity if I would discuss sin, no? Because sin is not a concern of ethics. Okay? Pangalawa, although I am a Christian, I am speaking as a philosophy professor and not as a Christian theologian. Okay? So, if you would want really to delve on the matter, I think I would want to rather refer you to your own private research on that. No? That is not the concern of ethics, to label a certain thing sinful. But if you want to consider whether the question could be moral, I can answer that. Not definitively, of course. No? If we would answer that in a utilitarian perspective, some utilitarians would say na moral ang pumatay para sa mas maraming tao. For example, you want to exterminate a group of terrorists to save the lives of millions, then some would say na it's moral to do that, especially if the cost is too much for you to allow the proliferation of terrorists. Okay? But for us to label whether it is sinful or not, I think that's not the concern of ethics. Okay? Correct me if I'm wrong in that manner. Can ethics or morality be developed with religious beliefs? Kasi po, di ba, doctrines also give insights about what is right and wrong, the good and bad. The first question, can ethics be developed? Yes. No? Kaya nga may Christian ethics. Okay? So the answer is yes, can. It is possible. It is possible for a moral standard to be derived from religious beliefs. Okay? So, yeah. But the thing here is, we want to appreciate na some moral codes derived from religious beliefs can go hand in hand even with moral standards na hindi born out of religious perspective. For example, the notion of equality, you know, we can say that some religions value equality and equity. Okay? For example, upholding the dignity of life. We can say that I think most religions, if not all, value the dignity of life. As to how the dignity of life is defined, medyo magkakaiba-iba. Okay? But it's possible. The bottom line here is, kaya tayo may ganitong module is for us, again, I think nasa module yan, no? To develop understanding, to develop an appreciation of the differences between religions. But you know, if I would summarize, no, these religions that we discussed, I think they fall, number one, to compassion. Compassion. For example, Hinduism teaches us that compassion is at the heart of the Dharma. No, yung example kong scorpion saka yung sage. Buddhism, no, Buddhism is, to me, no, I describe Buddhism as a religion of compassion. Confucianism, human-heartedness. Right? So, we can argue na merong similarity between these religions. But we should also hide the fact that there are disagreements, or should I call differences, with these religions.